Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I very much appreciate this hearing, and I appreciate the testimony I've heard so far from our witnesses. My first question is addressed to Secretary Darcy. Secretary Darcy, a particularly controversial issue in this committee and the Congress has been the Clean Water Act rulemaking. No matter what administration, what EPA, it would always be controversial when you consider how many rivers and streams of the United States are involved. The President has included $5 million to implement your Clean Water Act activities. Of course, this committee last week passed a bill that would essentially require you to toss the whole thing and start all over again. If that bill were to ever pass, and I wonder if anyone ever thought it would pass, but assuming that bill were passed, and that is to say the House and the Senate and signed by the President, would the Army Corps need additional funds to carry out all of the requirements provided in that bill?
My understanding of the legislation you're referring to would require us to stop doing the current rulemaking and start over again, meaning, I think, additional consultation within the administration as well as with outside stakeholders. I would anticipate that if we were required to stop and start over again, we would probably need additional resources. The $5 million that was in the President's request for 2016 for the regulatory program is in anticipation of the rule that we have proposed going final, and that money would be used to train additional staff that would be needed in the initial startup to get up to speed on what the implementation of the new rule would involve.
Do you have any idea how much in funds it's taken to get this far, with all the interruptions and all the consultations with all of the states that you have done?
I don't have a good number for you, Congresswoman, about how much we've expended in proposing the rule.
But essentially, we'd be putting essentially the same resources. You'd have to go to all the states and all the sub jurisdictions all over again, and essentially begin what has been very expensive rulemaking all over again. I just want that for the record. I don't assume this bill would be passed, because I don't think there's any such thing as a controversial Clean Water Act bill on the waters of the United States. I'd like General Bostic to ask you about perhaps one of your oldest projects, and one that I must say I am grateful for the Army Corps for the way in which it has proceeded. During World War I, there were chemical weapons that were manufactured at in one of our neighborhoods. It was not then a neighborhood, but because all the information wasn't known, one of our most illustrious communities was built over that, and the Corps has pledged to make sure that that community is cleaned up and has proceeded forthwith. I have been briefed by your Baltimore District Office about this so-called FUDS site, formerly Defense Site, at the American University Spring Valley neighborhood. I think it was the end of February, to bring me up to date. And you have released an investigative report that has been available for public comment. So we see that work is proceeding and progress has been made. But General Bostic, I don't know if you've ever had an older project than this, but we're going to come on 25 years if we keep this up. And the timeline I have been provided for one of the last projects, Glenwood Road, has a high probability of excavation to be completed 2016-17, low probability excavation winter 2017, spring 2017, and site restoration not until spring or summer 2017. I have to ask you, General Bostic, is there any way to speed up this timeline, considering we're talking about a neighborhood where real people live and go to work every day and have had to abide this work for almost 25 years. Is there any way to speed up that deadline that would take us into 2017?
Representative, I'm glad our team was able to brief you. The numbers that you're tracking is exactly the way that I'm tracking the progress. I know they are working as hard and as diligently and as safely as they can. I can work with our division and district to determine if there is any way to move this faster, but honestly, I suspect that they are going as quickly as they can, but I will go back.
I was sure that you would say that, and I'm sure that they are. But I wish you would get back to me,
I will,
perhaps within a month's time, to see whether there's any way to speed up that timeline. And I would like to ask you about the 7. All right.
Mr. Babin.